The Vraxian Empire's survey vessel Dust Seeker hung motionless against the backdrop of stars, its crystalline hull refracting the light of a distant yellow sun. Captain Zextel stood at the command center, her scaled skin catching the glow of numerous holographic displays. The ship's primary scanner had detected something impossible. A civilization thriving on a planet that, by all known laws of science, should have been dead. "Run the atmospheric analysis again," she ordered, all four of her eyes fixed on the main display. The hologram showed a blue-green marble suspended in space, swirling with white clouds and vast oceans that covered most of its surface. Chief Science Officer Krell adjusted his breathing apparatus, the device that filtered the ship's dry air to make it even drier for Vraxian comfort. "Captain, I've run it 7 times. The results are consistent. 71% surface water coverage. Yet the electromagnetic signatures clearly indicate an advanced civilization. In all their centuries of space exploration, the Vraxians had never encountered a species that evolved on a water-rich world. Their own planet, Vrax Prime, was a desert paradise where water existed only in small, precious underground reservoirs. Their bodies had evolved to extract moisture from nearly any source, and their technology had developed around the principle that water, in large quantities, was toxic to life. Could they be artificial constructs? Zextel proposed, her central crest rising with curiosity. Perhaps some ancient race built machines to inhabit this world. The science officer brought up detailed scans on his console. "No, Captain. We're detecting organic life signatures, billions of them, and the technological level." He paused, double-checking his readings. "They're on the cusp of faster-than-light travel." This news sent a ripple of unease through the bridge crew. The Vraxian Empire had maintained its dominance in this sector of space precisely because they were the only ones with FTL capability. The thought of a new species achieving this milestone, especially one that defied their basic understanding of biology, was deeply disturbing. "Show me their population centers," Zextel commanded. The hologram zoomed in on Earth's surface, highlighting massive cities along coastlines and rivers. "They build their settlements near water sources," she observed with a mixture of horror and fascination. "They seem to be drawn to it." First Officer Venrex, who had been quietly processing this information, finally spoke up. "Captain, this violates everything we know about viable habitats. The High Council must be informed immediately." "Agreed," Zextel said, but her voice carried a note of hesitation. "However, we need more data. Prepare a stealth probe for launch. I want detailed observations of these water dwellers." As the crew carried out their orders, Zextel couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the brink of something momentous. The Vraxian Empire had built its scientific and cultural identity around the principle that water was a necessary evil, useful in small amounts but deadly in large concentrations. Their terraforming technologies, their expansion policies, even their religious beliefs were founded on this universal truth. The probe launched silently, its adaptive camouflage rendering it nearly invisible as it descended through Earth's atmosphere. Within hours, it began transmitting data that would shake the very foundations of Vraxian society. They watched in amazement as humans not only survived near vast bodies of water, but willingly immersed themselves in it. Children played in waves, ships crossed mighty oceans, and cities thrived in regions that would be considered death zones on any Vraxian world. "Look at this," Krell called out, his voice trembling with excitement. "They've built massive underwater structures, research facilities, transit tubes, even habitation complexes." He brought up footage of a deep-sea research station. "They don't just tolerate water, they've mastered it." Captain Zextel felt her worldview shifting. She had led numerous survey missions, catalogued hundreds of worlds, but nothing had prepared her for this. The implications were staggering. If their fundamental understanding of what made a planet habitable was wrong, what other truths might they have miscalculated? "Send a priority message to High Command," she ordered, her voice firm with resolve. "Classification, paradigm shift, We've discovered a species that rewrites everything we thought we knew about life itself. As the message was encoded and transmitted through subspace, Zextel continued to watch the holographic display of Earth. Somewhere down there, an entire civilization had developed along a path that Vraxian science had deemed impossible. She couldn't help but wonder what other impossibilities these humans might prove wrong. "Maintain observation distance," she commanded, "and prepare a comprehensive report. The Empire needs to know everything about these humans before they reach the stars." She paused, adding quietly, "Because when they do, nothing in our galaxy will ever be the same." The lecture hall at the Imperial Science Academy was packed to capacity. Dr. Mira Lin checked her instruments one final time as her ship, the UES Magellan, prepared for humanity's first faster-than-light jump. The historic moment was being broadcast across Earth's networks, but she focused solely on her readings. As Chief Science Officer, she couldn't afford distractions. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Vraxian Imperial Science Council was in chaos. Impossible. Elder Scientist Vaxthor slammed his scaled hand on the crystalline table, causing the holographic projections to flicker. These readings from the Dust Seeker must be flawed. No species could have evolved in such conditions. The chamber, normally a temple of logical discourse, had devolved into heated debate. Months of observation had only deepened the mystery of humanity's existence. The council chamber's dry air crackled with tension as dozens of the Empire's finest minds struggled to reconcile their fundamental theories with undeniable evidence. "The data is verified," replied Dr. Nexley, the youngest member of the council. She pulled up a series of biological scans. Humans are composed of approximately 60% water. Their cellular structure, their respiratory system, their entire biology is water-dependent. This revelation sent another wave of murmurs through the assembly. Vraxians, with bodies evolved to conserve every drop of moisture, typically contained less than 20% water. The idea of a functioning organism with such high water content seemed like a biological impossibility. Back on the Magellan, Dr. Lin watched as the FTL drive spooled up. "Field integrity at 98%, she reported. "Quantum alignment nominal." The ship hummed with power as humanity prepared to break the light barrier for the first time. Unknown to the crew, their calculations were slightly off. Not enough to prevent the jump, but enough to send them far off their intended course, directly into Vraxian-controlled space. In the council chamber, a junior scientist burst in, interrupting the heated debate. "Honored elders, we've detected an unknown vessel using crude FTL technology. He hesitated. "It's them. The Waterworlders." The Magellan emerged from FTL in an unfamiliar star system. Warning alerts immediately filled the bridge as the ship's sensors detected multiple artificial structures. Dr. Lin's eyes widened as she processed the readings. "Captain," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "we're picking up signs of non-human technology. Lots of it." Captain Sarah Chin quickly took command of the situation. "All stop. Power down non-essential systems. Let's not appear threatening." She turned to her communications officer. "Prepare first contact protocols." The Vraxian response fleet arrived within minutes, their crystalline ships surrounding the Magellan in a precise formation. On their bridges, Vraxian crews wore extra filtration masks, believing the human ship might somehow contaminate their environment with water vapor. Dr. Nexley, who had been summoned from the council chamber, stood aboard the Vraxian flagship. "Look at their ship design," she observed, studying the Magellan through multiple sensor readings. "The hull is designed to withstand pressure from both inside and outside. They've built it to survive underwater, as well as space." The human vessel's very construction challenged Vraxian engineering principles. Their own ships were built to keep every molecule of moisture contained and controlled. The idea of designing for submersion was alien to them. First contact was initiated through simple mathematical exchanges, followed by basic visual communications. The Vraxians were stunned to see the humans operating in what appeared to be a moisture-rich environment. The humans, in turn, were fascinated by the crystalline appearance of the Vraxian ships and their occupants' obvious adaptation to arid conditions. Dr. Lin found herself facing a being that looked like a cross between a lizard and a crystal formation. The Vraxian scientist, Dr. Nexley, spoke through the translation matrix they had hastily established. "Your existence challenges everything we know," Nexley stated bluntly. "How do you prevent cellular breakdown in such high moisture conditions?" Lin couldn't help but smile. "How do you maintain cellular function with so little water?" she countered. "From our perspective, your biology should be impossible." This exchange marked the beginning of a scientific revolution for both species. The Vraxians discovered that their understanding of biology had been limited by their own evolutionary path. Humans learned that life could exist with far less water than they had imagined possible. As the initial shock wore off, both sides began to see the potential benefits of collaboration. The Vraxians' expertise in moisture extraction and conservation could revolutionize human colonization efforts in arid environments. Human understanding of aquatic ecosystems could help the Vraxians explore resources they had previously considered too dangerous to approach. "Perhaps," Dr. Nexley suggested, her scales shifting color with excitement, "we have both been trapped by our own preconceptions of what life requires." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "Would your people be willing to share knowledge?" Captain Chen stepped forward. "That's why we're out here," she replied. "To learn and to share what we know. Although," she added with a slight smile, "we didn't expect to start quite so soon." The accidental first contact between humans and Vraxians would later be remembered as a pivotal moment in both species' histories. It proved that the greatest discoveries often come not from finding what you expect, but from being forced to confront what you believe impossible. 3 months after the accidental first contact, the UES Magellan docked at Vraxian Central Station, a massive crystalline structure orbiting Vrax Prime. The human delegation, led by Ambassador Marcus Rodriguez and Dr. Mira Lin, prepared for the first official diplomatic meeting between the two species. "Remember," Rodriguez briefed his team, "we're not just representing Earth. We're representing every water-rich world that the Vraxians might have overlooked or dismissed." The ambassador adjusted the humidity controls in his environmental suit, designed to keep the humans comfortable in the Vraxians' arid artificial atmosphere. Inside the Grand Council chamber, the contrast between the species couldn't have been more striking. The Vraxian officials, their crystalline-scaled bodies reflecting light in prismatic patterns, sat in climate-controlled pods that maintained their preferred bone-dry environment. The human delegation, meanwhile, required periodic hydration and humidity maintenance that the Vraxians found both fascinating and disturbing. High Chancellor Zex Moore, the leader of the Vraxian Science Council, initiated the proceedings. "We have reviewed the preliminary data from our cultural exchange," their translator conveyed. "Your species' relationship with water is unprecedented. Our medical experts are particularly interested in your circulatory system." Dr. Lin stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "We've prepared a detailed presentation on human physiology," she said. "But first, I'd like to address something we've noticed in your historical records. You've bypassed thousands of potentially habitable worlds because of their water content." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Chancellor Zex Moore's scales shifted to a deeper blue, indicating intense interest. "Those worlds are toxic," they stated firmly. "Our ancestors attempted colonization of water-rich environments. All attempts ended in disaster." Ambassador Rodriguez saw his opening. "Perhaps," he suggested carefully, "those attempts failed because you were trying to impose Vraxian environmental needs on water-rich worlds. What if instead we worked together? Your expertise in moisture control combined with our experience in aquatic environments could open up entirely new possibilities for both our species." The proposal sparked an intense debate among the Vraxian Council members. Dr. Nexley, who had been promoted after her role in the first contact, spoke up in support. "Consider the implications," she urged her colleagues. "The humans have developed technologies we never pursued because we assumed they were impossible. Their underwater cities alone represent an entirely new frontier of engineering. As if to emphasize her point, Dr. Lin brought up footage from Earth's deep-sea habitats. The Vraxians watched in amazement as humans moved freely through pressurized underwater environments that would have crushed their crystalline bodies. But the most exciting potential, Dr. Lin continued, lies in medicine. She displayed molecular diagrams showing the interaction between water and organic cells. Your species has evolved remarkable moisture retention capabilities. Understanding these mechanisms could help us develop better treatments for dehydration-related conditions. In return, our knowledge of aquatic biochemistry could help you safely explore resources you've previously considered inaccessible. The scientific implications were staggering, but it was the economic potential that finally swayed the more conservative council members. Vast regions of space that the Vraxians had written off as uninhabitable suddenly represented untapped opportunities. Chancellor Zex Moore raised all four hands, a gesture of formal acknowledgement. We propose the establishment of a joint research initiative, they announced. A combination of your water mastery and our desert adaptation technologies could revolutionize colonization methods for both our species. As the diplomatic discussions continued, a young Vraxian scientist approached Dr. Lin during a recess. Is it true, they asked hesitantly, that human children intentionally submerge themselves in water for recreation? Lin smiled, pulling up a video on her tablet. We call it swimming, she explained, showing footage of a public pool on a summer day. Most of us learn it as children. It's not just recreation, it's part of our cultural identity. The Vraxian watched in fascination as humans of all ages moved through water with casual ease. Perhaps, they suggested, their scales shifting to an iridescent pattern indicating deep thought. We have been viewing water not just incorrectly, but too narrowly. You don't merely survive in it. You thrive in it. Ambassador Rodriguez overheard the exchange and recognized its significance. The Vraxians weren't just learning new scientific facts. They were experiencing a fundamental shift in how they viewed their relationship with water itself. The day concluded with the signing of the Earth-Brax Cooperation Treaty, but the real breakthrough wasn't in the diplomatic agreements. It was in the gradual realization by both species that their differences weren't obstacles to overcome, but opportunities to explore. The Vraxians' fear of water and humanity's mastery of it weren't incompatible. They were complementary approaches to understanding the fundamental nature of life itself. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ship, Chancellor Zex Moore made an unprecedented request. We would like to send a delegation to Earth, they announced. Not just to study your technology, but to understand how your species learned to embrace what we have always feared. The request marked a turning point in Vraxian history. For the first time, they were willing to question not just their scientific assumptions, but their cultural relationship with water itself. The journey from fear to understanding had begun, and neither species would ever view the universe quite the same way again. 1 year after the historic treaty, the Vraxian research vessel, Water Dancer, named in a deliberate break from traditional Vraxian ship naming conventions, hovered above Earth's Pacific Ocean. Inside its specially modified observation deck, Dr. Nexley and her team watched in amazement as a human submersible descended into the depths below. Recording all sensor data, announced Tekvar, her junior researcher. The human vessel is approaching the hydrothermal vent field. Pressure readings are extraordinary. The submersible, piloted by Dr. Lin and her team, was demonstrating deep-sea exploration techniques to their Vraxian colleagues, though the Vraxians couldn't physically join them in the pressurized environment. The live feed and sensor data were revolutionizing their understanding of aquatic ecosystems. They're approaching a black smoker, Nexley observed, her scales shifting to match the dark waters on the view screen. Temperature differentials should make this region completely inhospitable, yet their sensors are detecting multiple forms of life. In the submersible, Dr. Lin smiled as she narrated their descent. What you're seeing is an entire ecosystem that exists without sunlight, drawing energy from chemical reactions instead. These organisms have evolved to thrive in conditions that seem impossible by conventional standards. The parallel to the Vraxians' own evolutionary story wasn't lost on Nextly. Her people had evolved to survive in harsh desert conditions, yet here were creatures that had adapted to an environment that seemed even more extreme. Meanwhile, on Vrax Prime, another breakthrough was taking shape. Human environmental engineers had helped design the first enclosed water research facility, nicknamed the Droplet. Inside its carefully controlled environment, Vraxian scientists could safely study aquatic life forms while protected by advanced containment systems. Professor Sarah Chen, now heading the Joint Xenobiology program, stood in the Droplet's observation room with High Chancellor Zexmore. They watched as Vraxian researchers, wearing specially designed protective suits, conducted their first hands-on experiments with water-based life forms. Your species' fear of water wasn't entirely unfounded, Chen noted, reviewing data from their latest experiments. Your crystalline cellular structure is indeed vulnerable to excessive moisture, but that same structure gives you incredible adaptability when properly protected. Zexmore's scales rippled with interest. We're discovering that our moisture extraction capabilities, evolved for survival, have unexpected applications in water filtration and purification. Several human colonies have already expressed interest in implementing our technology. The collaboration was yielding results faster than either species had anticipated. Vraxian moisture control technology was revolutionizing water reclamation in human desert colonies. In return, human aquatic engineering was helping the Vraxians access resources in water-rich environments they had previously avoided. But the most significant breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. A young Vraxian geneticist, inspired by human diving suits, proposed a radical idea. What if they could temporarily modify Vraxian biology to allow safe interaction with aquatic environments? The project, codenamed Aqueous Adaptation, combined Vraxian cellular engineering with human environmental protection technology. The first trials were modest, allowing Vraxian researchers to briefly touch water without pain, but the implications were enormous. "Watch this," Dr. Lin said, as she demonstrated the latest prototype in the Droplet's testing chamber. A Vraxian volunteer, protected by the new biotechnology, slowly lowered their hand into a water tank. Instead of the expected painful reaction, their crystalline scales adapted, forming a protective barrier. The modification doesn't just prevent damage, the volunteer reported, their voice tight with excitement. "I can feel the water, the pressure, the temperature, the movement. It's unlike anything in our experience." The success of these early experiments led to an unexpected cultural shift among the younger generation of Vraxians. What had begun as scientific curiosity was evolving into something more, a desire to understand and experience water not just as a subject of study, but as a fundamental part of life itself. In Earth's oceans, the research submersible approached a coral reef, its cameras transmitting vivid images of the underwater ecosystem to the water dancer above. Nextly watched the display of colors and life with new understanding. "We thought we were teaching you about survival in harsh conditions," she commented to Dr. Lin over the comlink. "Instead, you're teaching us that our definition of harsh was limited by our own experience." Lin guided the submersible through a school of fish. "That's the beauty of scientific exchange," she replied. "Every species sees the universe through the lens of their own evolution. When we share our perspectives, we all see more clearly." As if to emphasize her point, the submersible's lights illuminated a new species of deep-sea creature, one that combined characteristics of both water-dependent and crystalline life forms. The discovery would later be named Harmonious Nexilus, in honor of Dr. Nextly's pioneering work in human Vraxian cooperation. The day's research concluded with another milestone: the first successful test of a Vraxian-designed underwater drone, built using their crystalline technology, but incorporating human aquatic engineering principles. It represented more than just technological advancement. It was a physical embodiment of how far both species had come in understanding each other's relationship with water. Perhaps, nextly mused as she recorded her daily observations, the true measure of intelligence isn't just in how well we survive our native environment, but in how willing we are to understand environments that seem alien to us. 5 years after first contact, the joint human-Vraxian expedition ship Harmony entered orbit around HT 100 and 89,733 bits, a water-rich exoplanet that the Vraxians had previously classified as uninhabitable. The vessel itself was a testament to the partnership between the two species, its crystalline hull incorporating both Vraxian moisture control technology and human aquatic engineering. Captain Elena Santos stood on the bridge alongside Vraxian Mission Commander Texri, both watching as their teams prepared for the first landing operation. The planet's vast global ocean sparkled beneath them, its deep blue waters tinted by the light of its parent star. A decade ago, we would have marked this world as toxic and moved on, Texri remarked, their scales shifting to match the ocean's hue. Now we're about to establish the first joint colony on its surface. The colony design was revolutionary, a floating city that would serve as home to both species, using modified versions of Earth's sea platform technology, combined with Vraxian crystalline architecture. They had created structures that could withstand the planet's intense storms while maintaining separate environmental zones for both human and Vraxian inhabitants. Dr. Mira Lin, now Director of Xenobiological Integration, supervised the deployment of the first habitat module. Environmental systems are nominal, she reported. The Vraxian moisture barriers are holding steady, and the human sections are maintaining optimal humidity levels. The real triumph, however, wasn't just in the technology. Young Vraxians, raised with the new understanding of water that came from human collaboration, were volunteering in unprecedented numbers for the colonization project. Many had undergone the latest version of the aqueous adaptation treatment, allowing them to work alongside humans in moderate humidity environments. "Look at this," called out Dr. Kira Patel, the expedition's marine biologist. She had detected something extraordinary in their initial ocean surveys, life forms that seemed to combine characteristics of both Earth's marine organisms and Vraxian crystal-based biology. "The universe has been conducting its own experiments in adaptation," she explained to the gathered team. "These creatures have evolved to use crystalline structures similar to Vraxian biology, but in an aquatic environment. They're living proof that our different approaches to survival aren't mutually exclusive." Back on Earth, the changes were equally profound. The Vraxian moisture extraction technology had transformed human desert reclamation efforts. The Sahara was blooming, not through traditional terraforming, but through a new hybrid approach that combined water conservation with careful ecosystem management. In the Mariana Trench, Vraxian-designed crystalline structures housed research stations at depths previously thought impossible to colonize. The materials, inspired by their own biology, but adapted for underwater use, were revolutionizing deep-sea exploration and resource extraction. Commander Texri received a priority communication from the Vraxian Science Council. The genetic modification program has achieved another breakthrough. They announced to the crew, "The latest generation of adapted Vraxians can maintain direct water contact for up to 6 hours without protective equipment." But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. In the Grand Hall of the Vraxian Science Academy, a new memorial had been erected. It showed two figures, one human, one Vraxian, standing together beside a pool of water. The inscription read, "Through understanding our differences, we discover our common ground." As the first colonists began settling into their new home on HT 100 and 89,733 bits, Captain Santos and Commander Texri shared a moment of reflection in the observation dome. Below them, the planet's endless ocean stretched to the horizon, no longer a barrier but a bridge between their species. "We feared water because we didn't understand it," Texri said, watching a group of human children teaching young Vraxians how to operate aquatic equipment. "You feared the desert because you hadn't mastered it. Together, we've overcome both limitations." Santos nodded, remembering the early days of their partnership. The real discovery wasn't just that we could survive in each other's environments, she replied. It was learning that our different evolutionary paths gave us complementary strengths. Your crystal technology, perfect for space. Our water mastery, ideal for colonization. The Harmony sensors detected another ship entering the system, a vessel from a newly discovered species that had been watching both humans and Vraxians with great interest. Like the Vraxians before them, they had believed water-rich worlds to be uninhabitable. Now they were coming to learn. Ready to welcome more students to our ocean classroom? Santos asked with a smile. Texri's scales rippled with anticipation. The galaxy is mostly water, they responded. We've only begun to explore its possibilities. And thanks to our partnership, we can finally dive deep into all its mysteries. As the new ship approached, the waters of HFY 189,733 bits reflected the light of its star, creating a brilliant display of colors that seemed to celebrate the triumph of cooperation over fear, of understanding over prejudice. The rising tide of knowledge had lifted both species to heights neither could have achieved alone, and their journey was still just beginning. The end.